Welcome to the podcast Running Toward. This podcast tells stories of ordinary people who couldn't look away once they saw the hidden crisis in foster care and the families impacted. Our guests share heartbreak that led them to take reluctant and unexpected small, faithful steps toward the most vulnerable in their communities. Not because they had a plan, and not because they felt ready, but because they couldn't unsee their pain. You'll hear how people living normal lives discover that getting closer changed them. Their comfort mattered less, their grip on uncertainty faded, and their faith got feet in quiet, everyday ways. Ending the crisis for one or for all isn't a quick fix. It's a long, slow, often messy journey alongside one of the most overlooked and misunderstood groups in our community. Running Toward gives you a front row seat to the hidden crisis in foster care and the families impacted, and to the ordinary people who choose not to look away. Hey, welcome to Running Tours. We have another great episode today with my friend Robyn. She has a unique perspective as an adoptee, so we're going to get to hear how the Lord brought her into this space and really her unique perspective and passion on, yes, serving kids in her home, but also wanting to get them back to their families, their moms, their dads, their grandparents, their relatives, and just the passionate way that she's pursued that through her foster care journey. So, Robyn, thanks for being here. Well, we'll start easy. So tell me, what does a typical day in the Werner household look like these days?
Going 90 miles an hour. We're all doing different things. My kids all have their different activities they do. And I have my own different activities I do. And Jacob works all the time. And so, yeah. It's fast and furious.
What's your age spread?
My oldest just turned 15. And my youngest is almost 6. So
wow, so high school to elementary.
Mm-hmm, yeah.
all the schools.
Yeah, it all makes sense.
So pick up and drop off are super easy.
Luckily, we all live in an area where a lot of them walk, and so
that
makes it easy. We do some bus and some pickup, but it's all kind of in one little area.
Because there's no way you could be at 3 schools at one time.
No.
Well, to let everybody know, like Robyn and I have known each other for a really long time, like early on in my foster journey, their foster journey, and connected. And so it's cool to kind of get back together and get an update and also just kind of walk people through, because I love that your perspective at coming at it as an adoptee, and we haven't had that voice yet on the podcast. So take me back to when you saw the billboard of the teenager, the elderly woman. Take me back to that kind of those early moments when you started walking into this space.
I just have this very vivid memory I've always drawn back to of being on a youth trip, and there was this billboard, and it was a woman that was probably in her 90s, and it said she had fostered somewhere between 90 and 110 kids. And I remember being a teenager and being I want to be her one day. And also being that's super weird.
It's a really weird thought for a teenager.
Right. But I always was drawn towards kids in crisis. Just hearing their stories, I always would read biographies from people that had been through really difficult things. And I just wanted to be involved in that space. I think being adopted was a part of that.
Right.
But I just wanted to help kids, because I would always think where do they go when they need help? Right. I would always think that I could always fall back on my parents, but where would they go? Where would they land?
Yeah. What happened to the other kids?
Right. In a difficult position. So I just remember thinking I wanted to be her. And I also thought that's kind of a weird thing for a teenager to think.
I think it goes back to what you said, even in your answer, that you had that lens of compassion and empathy because that was your lived story. Somebody stepped in, into your story, and you got, adopted into a family, and you were that kid that for whatever reasons needed another family. And so you had this lens of okay, what happens to the to the other kids in these situations? Right.
And the narrative, I feel back then, the narrative has changed some for adoptees, because in the adoptive space, and there's a lot of people that talk about this, is they were always seen as you completed our story. Mm-hmm. Very romanticized.
Yeah, rainbows and unicorns.
Right.
Yeah.
I am grateful that my parents were never the type of people that were like, would ever be like, we gave you a home, or
Right.
I have seen those kinds of stories. My parents just always, they would just say like, we struggled having children. And so we were so thankful that we got to adopt. My older brother's 3 years older than me, and then me. So we were not the completion. She did end up getting pregnant with my younger brother after, but we were just a blessing to them because they couldn't have children. I think as I started to know my own story is when kind of some of that changed, not only for me, because I had already started feeling like I wanted to have my own voice in my adoption and like the grieving process of it. But when you're never given those words, it's hard to know how to describe it.
Yeah.
And so as I uncovered a lot of things through getting documentation of my adoption and finding out pieces of my story about my biological mother, and learning about my family, is when kind of some of that changed. It was like, oh, this was a very difficult situation that I was in. And then I became even more grateful for where I landed.
Right.
So, especially hearing about my siblings.
Yeah. And I think, now there has been definitely progress in the way that we look at adoption, talk about adoption. But back in the days when you were adopted, like there was one narrative in general, and that narrative stayed for quite a while. It transitioned into international adoption, and we're gonna, go save all these kids. And but how did learning your own story of adoption change some things in the way that you looked at your family, you looked at the kids around you, even as you got married, and you and your husband started thinking about what are we gonna do? Are we gonna have biological kids? Are we gonna adopt? How did kind of all that? I'm sure there was like a real messy middle of all of that kind of colliding at one time.
It was because we had tried to get licensed, and then it didn't work out. We ended up moving, getting pregnant with our second child. So we had to kind of wait a little bit for us to actually end up getting licensed. So that's around the time I met you, is when we were kind of involved in the space, but not like helping, but we weren't doing the fostering part. So I think we did some respite. We helped, facilitate some events that, through just the organizations that we were both running at the time. And then as I think I was pregnant when I was having my first child is when which is very common with adoptees. That's when they kind of start going, where did I come from? Wanting to know more medical history and all that. And that's when I started trying to get information about my biological mother, and then found out some really difficult things, and found out that some of my siblings had been in foster care, and that truthfully, it devastated me.
Sure. Yeah.
Yeah. It devastated me.
Because they were younger siblings, right?
Yes. Yeah. And I didn't know their stories, and I didn't know how it all happened, but I felt a lot of, I felt guilt about it, because I was the oldest. So my biological family's story, you want to think you get adopted, and then your biological parents go on and they do greater things. And I don't know half of that. So that may have happened. But in this situation, it got gravely worse. And so I felt guilt about it. And I also was just like, wow, I want to help these kids in this space, and I can't even help my own siblings. Like it just felt it was really sad to hear that, but it still motivated me to be involved.
Yeah. I think that's and we'll get to this in a little bit, but I think that's why I love having your voice on here, because that's the unique piece that as people in the foster adopt space who are not adoptees, I think it's so hard for us to understand the evolution of understanding and the emotions and the, like you said, grieving of being an adoptee. Like it's not like, I think that's the way the world wants to present, like gavel drops, we all live happily ever after. But like you said, when you get pregnant, then that's this wave of new emotions because you're in a whole new season now, and you're like, well, wait, what was this like for my biological mom? What was the circumstances around my birth? What, like you said, what's my medical history? I think those are things that I hope foster adopt families are around adoptees so they can hear, because it's one of the things we're going to be walking our kids through and along with, and it doesn't end at 18 or 25, or, it's been an evolution for you as you've walked through it. So if you don't mind, tell us about when you finally got to connect with your siblings that you didn't even know existed for the long time. What did that do inside of you and trigger even in how you and Jacob thought about family and where you were going with your foster journey?
I remember when I had my first daughter, it was like I had met my first blood relative. So that's huge. Something really, it was kind of a pivotal moment for me. And then not long after, I met my siblings and some of my extended family. And I think for me, it was just, it's a connection. I can't really explain it. It's like what I guess normal families that are not built through adoption feel like when they're with their family. They're like, oh, like I see these similarities here and all that kind of stuff. I think some of it for me is like my language when it comes to families, I feel like is a little different, because I just think that, like, for one, I think a lot of adoptive parents see their child's story as personal to them, and it's not. It's like this whole separate thing. And something I say to my boys, because the two children that we adopted are our sons, is that, like, first of all, you can't have too many people to love a child.
Exactly. Yes.
And you don't have to choose, like who's the parent and who's not. You don't have to do that. So, like, when I talk to my son about his dad, I talk about his dad. Yeah. And then he also has my husband, who he refers to as his papa. So that helps that we have a different name for it. But then, like, we talk about Mac's family and how they're kind of like family to us because they become like kind of like cousins to us.
Yeah, yeah.
But that's his family. And so, like, I don't have this desperate need to put, like, this grave staple on, I'm their mother.
Yeah.
I am their caregiver. They know I'm the one that's always met their needs since they were in our home. They know that.
Right.
I don't feel like I have to compete for this role.
Right.
They can also have that relationship with their biological families, and we can all be close. Like, it's okay.
Yeah.
I think some of it too is like, when they become adults, I want to be a part of the process so they don't feel like they have to rebel and do this own thing. Like, you're not rebelling against me to know your family. I want you to know your family.
Right.
I want you to be a part of their lives. I want it to be a part of our normal conversation. So it's not abnormal for us to do a FaceTime call with biological family. Like, oh, we have 10 minutes till bedtime. Let's call real quick. It's not this like formal thing, just kind of like how families are.
Right.
I think sometimes, and I get it. I understand, like, sometimes when you adopt a child, you feel protective about it for a reason.
Well, absolutely. Right. There's a reason they came into your home.
Absolutely.
Right.
And that is totally understandable. But I don't think that we have to protect our relationship with them because that's established. And I don't think we need to always make our kids choose.
Right.
That's my feeling on it.
Yeah.
They can love them. They can love us.
Right.
And it's okay.
Yeah.
I think that's something my parents also learned through me meeting my biological family is like, this is something we can support and be a part of. We don't have to feel like she's, we're
going to lose her or we're going to lose
us. Yeah. It's not her hurting us. This is her finding out her part, like her family, and like, we're still their family, like it's we're still her family, you know? And so, I think the way we talk about it sometimes feels a little different just because I can say my family, which refers to my biological family and my adoptive family. both are super important, and
Yeah.
not one is not more important than the other to me.
Right. Right.
So,
And we'll touch on it probably a little later, but you're not saying that in all circumstances you should engage in,
No.
because there are definitely circumstances where it is not safe.
and there are boundaries we have in place now with
Yeah.
with contact we have
Right.
from my biological family.
Mm-hmm.
I have some pretty big boundaries with that.
Mm-hmm.
And my whole biological family knows exactly what I'm talking about when I say that. But also with my boys, there are definitely boundaries
Yeah.
in place. And sometimes I've hurt feelings, and I've had some very tough conversations. And I've said, this is not a safe situation. We have to build trust here. And so,
Yeah.
but it's important to have those conversations.
Yes.
Because people can grow, and people can, they can change, they can grow, they can gain trust. Give them the chance to do that.
Yeah, and I think that's the piece that I think so many people are either scared to go into, they don't like the conflict of it, or they just don't even know how to have the conversation
Sure.
of, yes, there could be a relationship up to this point, but it's okay for me to set boundaries and say,
Yes.
this is our box and this is our safe box, and I want them to have all they can. And this box can change, doesn't have to be this way forever, but right now, this is where we're at. And be open to those conversations going forward, because like you said, ultimately they're going to grow into adults and they're going to get to go do whatever they want. And if you haven't walked alongside them through that journey, then they're going to go do it on their own.
Yes. I mean, you can't hide anything these
No.
days with social media and
No.
DNA testing and everything. Nothing is hidden anymore.
No.
And so we need to move with it, I think.
Yeah.
I also have compassion for parents that aren't going to they don't have the same story as I do. And they don't have the words like you're saying, and they don't know how to move into this space, and it's very scary, and they're trying to protect their child, and I get all of that. I think one of the most important things, and I can speak to this as far as someone who has had to be educated. For example, my sons are Black, and I'm a white mama, and so I have educated myself in that realm, because I know that I'm ill-equipped to raise Black children. So
Right.
I think one of the things that we not only need to hear from adoptive families, we also need to listen to adoptees. We need to listen to kids that have been through this, listen to their perspectives as adults.
Mm-hmm.
And then you can, move forward as you raise your child. Hey, these are the ways I can avoid this from happening.
Right. Right.
Avoid there being breaks in your relationship.
Right.
Avoid them having issues with their identity.
Right.
If you listen to the voices of those that have gone before you, that's
Yeah.
how you can, learn from that space.
Yeah. And just the reality that it's going to be messy.
Yeah.
Like, you're going to screw it up more times than you're probably going to get it right. But your kids are going to see you struggle with trying to do it right. I'm sure you had so many fumbles along the way where you're like, God, I wish I wouldn't have done that, or I wish I would have done this. But that you stay in the game, like you stay in trying. You keep trying, and your kids will see that, even if you screw it up a lot.
My kids are very well aware that I am not perfect. Don't have to remind them of that. I do sometimes, because I say I'm so sorry for, how I handled this or this or
Right.
this. But I just think I very much want them to see me as a human that's, like you said, it's in the struggle,
Right.
Yeah. And if we don't get it right the first time, we try again and say
Yeah.
so sorry that happened that way. Let's try this again.
Yeah. Yeah.
We all need those do-overs,
100%, especially as a parent.
Yes.
We all need
We
those.
don't know what we're doing.
We don't.
Stop acting like we
I
do.
know. So it's a flashback on something you said earlier. So you said you guys were kind of starting the process here, then your husband gets transferred, or you're working in the space, but then y'all get moved to Midland. Did you consider fostering there? What was there a situation that was unique there that you were like, this is probably not a good space for us to try this?
We were days away from our home study when my husband got a new job.
Oh, wow.
We were.
You did all the work.
We had it booked. Yeah, we had done all the work, all
Yeah.
the trainings for the agency we were with in San Antonio. And then he got this job opportunity, and I told him, because I knew this, doing a home study is expensive.
Right.
And so I told him, I was like, we're going to move, and let's just kind of bring this to a halt. We didn't have any family there,
Yeah.
no support. I knew a few people.
Yeah.
So I just thought the door shut.
Yeah.
And I wasn't going to put my family in a situation where I was like, how would we do trainings and we don't know people?
For babysitting, yeah.
I don't like to ask people for help. So I was just like, well, this isn't the right time. Plus, we saw Midland as temporary.
Yeah.
So I think we thought we would just like move back and maybe we'd do it later.
Yeah. But was that desire there still to do that, or was it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes, very much so. And it felt weird because we had invested so much.
Right.
But we also, my husband really wanted to advance in his career. So he needed to take this opportunity. So
there's been so many people that we've talked to on this podcast, and just people that I know that like they did that. They went all the way to here and then they job transfer. They got pregnant. They went and a lot of them kept at it. Like they didn't take that as a closed door, we're all done, but took it as a, all right, detour for a minute, but I still feel like the Lord has called us into this space.
Yeah. Life just keeps going on.
It does. Life keeps laughing.
I think that's the big lesson in this is it's not for people that we're established and we have lots of money and we're not moving and all of that. Those are the people that are good to foster. It's like we're all kind of in the messy of having like young children and it's
young
just
careers.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's in your life just always changes. It never stays the same.
Yeah. So tell me about the cool connection with Buckner.
So I was like eating lunch with some ladies I had met there, and they were like, there's a Buckner here in town that most people foster through. It was Buckner and then another agency. And I was like, really? I didn't know they were in the foster care space. I was actually adopted through Buckner as a domestic adoption. And they were like, oh yeah, they go with one or the other agency. And I was like, huh. So on the way home, it's like small area. I was like, I'm just going to stop by because that's weird. So I just stopped by, and I remember Sarah, who worked there, she was the director at the time. She came out and we were talking, and I was like, yeah, I was adopted through Buckner. And I have Marley and McCall are like 2 and 4 years old at the time, just toddling around. And she was like, who are you going to get licensed through? And I was just telling her our story. She was like, when did you do the trainings? And I was like, I don't know, sometime last year.
It's been a while.
Yeah. And she was like, well, look and see when the last training was. And then if the last training you did has not exceeded a year, we'll take all your trainings. You'll have to do a few that we require for our agency, but we'll just allow you to be licensed through us with all your trainings. Cause we had done 30 hours or whatever, 40 hours.
Easily.
Yeah. And so I was like, huh, interesting. So I went back and I looked at it, and I had done all the trainings in the summer or something. And then there was this break of time. This was so weird. It's always weird.
Always.
I was a photographer at the time, so I was shooting a wedding. And so I missed one of the major trainings. And so they were needing to catch me up, but they took 2 months to catch me up. And so that created this window of time that last training had not been done. And so because that happened, we weren't expired. And so I looked at it, and it was October, early October. And she was like, so you're saying we have 2 to 3 weeks to get y'all licensed? And I was like, I guess.
Sure.
She's like, it'll be tough, but we can do it. And I went home and I told my husband, and he was like, okay, let's do it. Because we had just talked about it for so long.
Yeah.
So it didn't take any convincing on his part. I never wanted to feel like this was my thing. It needed to be our thing.
Oh, for sure.
And he was like, well, they'll take the trainings and let's just do this. Cause he's like, I'm tired of talking about it. We've been talking about this forever.
Yeah.
So yeah, we were licensed early October. It was around I feel like the 3rd of October, something like that. I went on a 10-day trip. I went to go see my biological family and some other friends. Mm-hmm. And I said, I will be back on this date. And then I got back in town. That day was right around the time my son now was born. Wow. And then the next day we got a call. So it was the day after we were available to take a call was when we got our first placement, who is my son now.
Isn't that crazy to look back on timing and go, God was working something out, a delayed training for 2 months.
It makes me it makes me emotional because it was like, had we not, like, Mac wouldn't be in our life,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah.
And so I thought that door had shut. But
Yeah.
then when we went to the West Texas, which is, I know where you're from
Yes.
as well, good old West Texas, I feel like that was where we met our sons.
Yeah.
And then when that journey was over, we left.
Yeah. And you went there thinking, yeah, we'll just be here for a short time. We're not going to do this.
Right.
We'll
Nothing
do it.
major will happen here.
We won't expand our family, double our family size.
Nope.
Yeah, it is crazy. I've done that with my own story, to look back and go, when we were getting fostered, our now daughter's home was falling apart. And, you know, God didn't need me to be her mom.
Right.
But I got the opportunity, if I was going to be obedient and keep doing where he was leading me to do. And so then I got the opportunity to be that.
Absolutely. I mean, I felt so undeserving to have Mac.
Yeah.
I mean, we went into this like to help families and to help kids, and they hand me this teeny tiny baby. And I think I like I told you, they just kind of acted like he was our son, and I was like, "What do you mean?" Like, I'm here
we just met.
Right. I'm here to help, you know, help these hard situations that are happening. And they were like, "Well, he's not going anywhere." And I've had conversations with his family about this, and they're glad that we adopted Mac. Like I said, we have a great relationship with them and see them on a fairly regular basis. But that was a hard situation because I was a brand new foster parent. I knew the language that was being used was not, I wouldn't call it insanely ethical, because you should look at children as, you know, a temporary placement in your home.
And that is for everyone. The goal of Child Protective Services is reunification. That is the goal until a moment. They should never drop them off and be like, "You're going to adopt this child."
Right. Like, yeah. Like I had told you about how there was a caseworker, and he had a great team. They were all great to work with and everything, but he had a caseworker that I had mentioned something about, like, you know, Mac was a preemie, so I was talking about how it would be beneficial for him if he had got to nurse as a baby, because he was just kind of fragile in the beginning. And he's like, "Well, you might as well breastfeed him because, you know, he's not going anywhere." And I just remember being like,
Dude.
That's just not the language I would use as an adoptee. That's kind of, it's offensive, honestly.
And also, he can't make that promise.
Right.
He's not in charge of that.
And you hear about that all the time, where families are hurt so much because they think,
yes,
oh, they said they're going to stay, and then they don't. And like I said, like, I've worked with amazing caseworkers, and this is not a way to like put them down, because they have a really hard job. But I was just like, I'd like the language to be used differently. But because I was new in the space.
Yeah, you don't know what you don't know.
I didn't know how to like combat that or say like, "Hey, wait a minute." You know, like I was just like, that's weird. Like, that's what I would think. And then at the time, you can't do that anymore. But now they terminate it at 6 months. They can't do that anymore. And for a reason, you know, they give parents a full year. And so had he had a full year in court, his biological family may have been able to put a little more of a fight in. They will say now, like, we've talked about it, and they're glad he's with us. And there's lots of reasons for that, but like, they're happy that he's with us, and we're happy to know them. And and actually his aunt, his biological aunt, actually fostered his little sister after.
Oh, wow.
So like,
crazy.
She's an insanely amazing person. Like, she's raising 3 of his siblings.
Wow.
So it was just a window of time. Like, she's glad he went to us. And so now we can, you know, have a relationship, and it's not like siblings. It's more kind of like cousins in a way, because they see each other every now and then, and siblings, you know, really should be raised together. And I wish that he could have been.
Right.
I think this was it was a tough time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think that's where, in the foster care space, I hate it when people start getting into like absolutes, like it should always go this way, or it should always go this way, or we're going to make rules so it always, you know. I think we're seeing a swing right now where they're just reunifying so fast. And these biological families or these relative caregivers, they're not ready. They're not equipped. The writing's on the wall. It's not going to last. But they've decided that the best for kids is always to go home. That's not true.
No.
The best is not always to be adopted. No.
It doesn't have to be one extreme to the other. It has to be looked at case by case.
Yes. And that's where I've been in this game for 20 years and I've never seen the pendulum land in the middle. It's always we're removing everybody and adopting them out, or we're not removing anybody, or we're sending everybody to relatives. And I'm like, can we just land in the middle where everybody's being objective and nobody's going into a case with a preconceived notion of how this should play out.
Right. And I mean, in a way, I've seen a big shift, with all the shift that's happened with trying to keep kids local. I know it's been a messy situation. Like I said, I've kind of stepped out of the whole normal foster care, you've stayed very involved and I have kind of okay, now I'm going to raise 5 kids. Yeah. And why do I now have 5 kids? Why did I make this decision? They're not little anymore. They keep growing and they need more food. But, right. But I'm so glad that they have put an emphasis on keeping families locally together.
Right.
I think that is important, even if it doesn't end up in reunification. It shows respect for the fact that biological families should be together if they can, if it's healthy and it's safe.
Right.
And so I think there has been, like I've said before, I like how the narrative has changed.
Yeah, it's improved.
But yeah, it's not always like every kid needs to go to their biological family.
No. Yeah. And that's where they've gotten to where they're reporting stats. And I'm like, but you're not telling the stories behind the stats, because I can tell you the story. And you had one of those where on stats, it looked like it was a victory because the child went home. But when you know the story, you were like, that was not a win.
Right.
There's a real good chance that kid's not safe or coming back into care.
Yeah. The other children that we fostered, so we fostered for 4 years and we fostered 6 kids. We adopted two of our kids that were in our home. And then the other 4 there was one that went back to a previous home, but the other 3 did go back to families. And the 2 of them that did go back to, there were 2 that went back to families that we were definitely wanting that to happen. And we were even assisting in the ways that we could for that to happen, which has some kind of interesting stories around it. But I really was trying to facilitate families spending time together.
Right.
And some of the caseworkers were like, why are you doing this? This is not normal, But I didn't think every child that came into our home was supposed to stay. I never thought that when we fostered kids. I just thought we probably would end up adopting.
Yeah, because the stats flesh out 50-50.
Right.
If you look at them. Yeah.
I thought that might happen, but I didn't.
That wasn't your goal.
No, it wasn't the goal. And, we helped some of the families with visits and helped get one of the families, we helped get their home ready. My husband took a team out of men to help work on a house for one of the kids. We wanted that. But there was one that we had in the very end that it was a very difficult case. And I think because of what was happening, the friction that was happening between us and the caseworker, I didn't want her to leave my home, but I also didn't think she should be permanent. It wasn't a good fit for our family. I loved her so much and I think about her all the time, but she wasn't the right fit for our family. And I do think she went back to an abusive home, but I think that was a neglectful caseworker who had really made a reputation for herself in the area for being, she was very neglectful and very revengeful kind of attitude. Someone who shouldn't have been a caseworker.
Yeah. And I think that's one of the things, like you said, there are so many great caseworkers. I had a lot of great caseworkers, but there are some, and the challenge in the foster care space, what you hear is there's very little to no recourse for a foster parent because we don't have a voice. We don't have a vote really at all. And then the system doesn't necessarily police itself as far as, did the caseworkers do a good job on their case? Did it end up in the right situation? But you went after it. You fought for it.
I did because I had a lot of friends that had already dealt with this caseworker. We're talking like Midland's not too small, but it's small enough.
Yeah.
So you kind of know about a lot of the cases in the area. It's not like that in San Antonio. It's too widespread of an area. Right. But in Midland, we kind of, for the most part, knew each other through like networking and stuff.
Foster community small.
Yes, it is even in San Antonio. Yeah. And she had been in court, and like there were a couple of cases that she didn't get her facts straight, and so they ended up having to like redo the whole thing or whatever. I had heard a lot of stories about her, and so when she came into my home and she had a chip on her shoulder, and she wanted to argue, and she wanted to pit me as, truly, she wanted to make it harder for my family. I was becoming scared that they could possibly remove Michael from us, who's our son now, because he was already in our home when we had this other case with this little girl. And so there was a part of me that was like, I really want to close this case because I don't want her in my home. Right. But if she came in my home and she was, using language that I felt like was not professional, there was one time I told her to leave. That did happen. And then after she left, I kind of moved my way up I had been given a few cards of people that worked for the state and then worked for the region. And I just called them up because I'm like, if there's not accountability happening here, and it's kind of like what we talk about, like with state employees, it's really difficult to fire people at a higher level that are employed by the state government. Yep. And so I'm like, if they don't know what's happening, then like, how are they going to make an educated decision? And I can't make a decision that all these people are corrupt like this person, And so I called and I said, will you let me gather testimonials from these families that have also dealt with this caseworker? And she was very interested to hear about this. And pretty soon after, there was a supervisor and that caseworker that were told they can't. One was forced to retire, and she was her supervisor. And then the caseworker was told that she couldn't work in that area. They couldn't fire her, right? But they said, you cannot work here.
That's one of the things when I read that in your stuff you sent me, I was like, same thing. We got a caseworker fired because when you're fighting for the kids in your home, as a foster parent, you have very little avenues to do that. But once you learn the game, you learn what buttons to push and learn how. And it wasn't that we wanted to keep that child. I was like, you're just doing this child wrong. Like this child's not going to be safe. So I am the toddler can't speak for themselves. So yes, I'll do it.
She even asked us if we wanted to adopt this little girl. And I said, I don't think that it's the right fit. We're not the right fit for her. Yeah. And she was the same age as one of my kids. And so it just wasn't a good fit.
Yeah, and that happens.
I didn't think I could meet her needs. She needed to be in a home that had less children in it. We had a lot of kids.
That's okay.
She had a lot of trauma. And I was kind of, one of the kids that we fostered was a teenager. And I remember doing a FaceTime call with her when after she had lived in our home for that summer. I was on a FaceTime call with her when I was doing this case, and she looked at me in the video and she was like, she's like, I'm sorry, but you look really rough. I remember her saying that.
Love teenagers.
Yeah.
Love teenagers.
Didn't hold anything back. And then we had the little girl had this phenomenal counselor who would come and work with her in our home. And she was counseling us during it. She could tell we were really struggling. Yeah. We were struggling with her. And I think it was like, we had done fostering for 4 years, and I think I looked probably beat up at the time.
Like, 4 years in, you're like,
it was a lot, and it's funny to look back on it now because I was definitely younger than I am now, but I think I felt probably 20 years older. It was a chapter of time, and my life is very different now. But I'm glad we did it, even though it was hard. I think it was worth it for the kids.
Well, and also, I think it was a God thing that she came to your house, because that caseworker and that supervisor were going to hurt more kids.
Yeah.
And they needed somebody who was going to be like a little seasoned and a little salty and was going to go, I don't think this is how this is going to play.
When I have nothing to lose, I'm leaving. I'm moving away. So I'm not going to foster any more kids. Had that been different, maybe I would have handled it differently. Because you want every kid to have a fair case, and you know, the people that are on it.
So
I was on a ball.
No worries. So you've referenced a couple times in this that, you know, that faith was a part of it. You were looking for a church when y'all were in Midland, like you served, you know, other foster families in your church. Has the church always been a source of comfort and support through your foster journey and your journey as you discovered life as an adoptee and adult? Has it been a challenge? Have you found friends and foes? How has that journey been? Because we know in every relationship, there's ups and downs, and there's tension, and there's hard conversations that need to be had. How has that played out in your relationship with the Lord, with the church?
Honestly, I feel like we've kind of struggled finding a church that's a good fit for us. We've been a part of different churches. In the foster adopt world as an adoptee, and maybe this is some of my journey as an adoptee, is like sometimes I feel like I don't fit in either space sometimes. I remember in Midland there was some friction there because I really emphasized biological families and just the love that we should have for them. And I remember having some friction with some other families. I'm probably going to step on some toes here when I say this. You asked for it, but you said bring on the hard conversation.
These are the conversations that need to be had.
I have a hard time with some of the foster families that share too much information about their kids. And the reason that, before I came on this podcast, I asked Jacob, like, what do you want me to share about our journey? Because he has his own feelings about all of it. And he said, like, one of the main motivations that having children in our home was, like, he wanted them to feel a part. He wanted them to feel like they were loved just like our other children. And something he said was that, I think sometimes adopted kids get the bad rap because you're going through it with them, but biological kids also have things that go on too. And we also have mental illness in our biological families. Yep. And we have, things in our families that we're not proud of either.
Right.
I don't think anybody, all these families the bad stuff they've done is out and open in court. Man, I would never want someone to do that with my life.
Right.
I mean, I've had some really unattractive moments in my life. And so I think sometimes we are too harsh in what we share about their journeys. I don't like that. And on social media, for sure, it's a problem for me as an adoptee. I don't like it when people are sharing about, so-and-so's in and out of a treatment center, or, they were removed because of drugs, or nobody needs to know that information.
Right.
And so I find myself kind of being a little more secluded with who I share that information with. I don't share it on social media. I tell people all the time, my social media is a highlight reel. It will show you none of the messy, because that's not your business.
Right.
Especially when it comes to my children. If I want to share something about me or my adoption story, that is absolutely up to me. But what I share about them, that can follow them the rest of their life.
Exactly.
So as an adoptee, I'm really like, it's a sensitive topic for me. My parents never did that. Thank God we didn't have social media when I was growing up.
Listen, we are all grateful that there's nothing documenting our childhood.
Right. Yeah. I mean, like, they wouldn't have shared it if it was either, because like, that's just not how they are. But they also saw me as a blessing. They didn't see me as, oh, I have to deal with this kid, you know? I have my moments with my kids. I'm not saying that I don't, but I don't share it with a public realm of people.
Right.
I think that's acceptable in the adoption world, and it's something that I have a hard time with. So I have become more and more like hesitant to share a little, like I'm real careful about who I spend my time with. But I will say, like, through my our foster journey, I did have a group of people that were my people. That's and great. Like, still to this day, I love them very much. You know, sometimes we're together and sometimes we're apart, but like, they were the people that shared the same vision. And I think that that's something that I would share with anybody struggling in church in general, or in the if they're in the foster world or whatever. If they find that they have people that they don't really feel like they share values with, or they feel like they're not on the same page with, I just would encourage to like find your people.
Yeah, absolutely.
Don't give up, because if that's important to you to be, you know, like the Bible tells us to be,
it's important to be
a part of community. And it's something I want my children to be raised in the church. And, but I have to find my people that I share values with. And so I think that's something that I've just kind of been an echo in my head. Like, well, you have to find your people, Robyn. Like, it's not going to be, everybody's not going to be your people.
And it's okay.
And that's okay. And so I am more private. I think that's why I was so nervous to come on here, is I have become more private about what I share. And, you know, there are people in my life right now that have walked through some of this with my kids, that I'll say like, hey, I see you as my support system for my kids, but you're never going to see me sharing it on social media. Yeah. And I don't think that people should be doing that.
I agree. So to tie it all up, the reason, you know, one of the reasons I wanted you to come on is just because you have such a unique lens that you get to see this whole situation with. So if you could sit across the table from an adoptive mom, you're talking to me. Yeah. I have I have 2 adopted kiddos. One's in college, one's in middle school. What do I need to know as they're growing up? They're becoming adults. They're finding their spouse. They're having kids. What are those things? What are those things that they don't teach us in the foster parenting classes? What do I need to know?
I think something that surprised me as an adoptee is that my journey of like working through my feelings is kind of a lifelong journey. Mm-hmm. So like for children that were either in the system or like aged out of the system or whatever, the things that they've grieved and they've worked through, they're not always going to feel that way. Yeah. I think sometimes we try to mold how they feel about things, and you can do that when they're little, but when they get older,
try to reframe it for them. Yeah.
They're going to have their own feelings about it. Yeah. And so first of all, you need to be very respectful when you talk about their biological family, because regardless of how many times you tell them, well, you're not like that, they will feel that connection with their biological family if they know their biological family. Right. So being respectful of them and talking about them as if they are still important in their life, regardless of if you have a relationship with them. Right. Because the child will never completely, like, it's not like, oh, I was adopted and this is where my life begins. You know, even if they were adopted when they were little, they're still going to have this connection and feelings about it. So as they work through these feelings, don't take it personal. It's not your story, it's their story. Yeah. And just kind of walk through it with them. And, you know, if they're struggling with something, you know, hey, can we get someone to talk through this with you? Mm-hmm. Maybe I'm not the right person to do that. Right. You know, I just think we just need to understand that, like, we as people are complex.
Yep.
We don't stay little. We grow. We change our perspectives, and that's okay.
Yeah.
And don't worry about your relationship with them because you established that when you became their caregiver.
Yeah.
You know, don't talk to them in a way that you're protecting yourself. See them and see what they need to assist them with their journey. Something I've said many times is that, you know, as I've talked about raising 2 Black boys, I don't think I'm the best fit for them, honestly, in a lot of ways. Like, I wish they were raised by a Black mama that could meet their needs and talk through things with them from a perspective of experience.
Right.
I'm having to learn from other people. And so I have told them, like, this is just an open conversation I have with my children. Maybe one day you'll have feelings about this, and that's okay. I'm not going to take that personal.
Yeah.
My son, both of them have biological names, but one of my sons actually is a junior, and we know his father. And I've told his father and him, one day, if you want to change your name back to being your biological name, I am totally fine with that. We had children that all had started with the same initial.
Right.
And so I didn't want him to not feel a part.
Yeah.
But if one day he wanted to change his name back, I'm not going to take that personally. You know, like, that's fine because I see it as his journey.
Yeah.
The way he needs to process it.
That's the sentence, is like, go on them with their journey. Don't make it your journey.
Yeah. It's not your journey. It's their journey. And you're going to have your own feelings about your, you know, experience as a foster parent and the ways that you struggled through that. That's your story.
Yeah.
Their story is their own.
Yeah.
So, just don't take it personal. Just walk through it with them.
Yeah, that's great. Thanks, Robyn, so much for this time and sharing. And if you guys enjoyed this, hearing from all the different voices that we get to hear from, man, like, share, comment, and keep listening, because there are more amazing people who have stepped into this journey that we're going to get to talk to really soon. Thanks.